Tuesday, June 8th. We'll call this meeting to order. We're going to ask those in attendance to please stand if you are willing and able for the invocation delivered by Pastor Marsha Haney from the Bethany United Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Pastor, for being here.
Will you bow your heads with me? Almighty Creator, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today for keeping us in our right minds. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings upon the city of Wichita and connecting communities. Thank you for our mayor and the team of city council officials for their amazing leadership during this time. Thank you for the outstanding job they are doing in keeping our city economic going. Bless them with patience to continue working together for the good and well-being of our city and connecting communities. I pray and thank you for all government leaders locally and nationally. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's jump into our regular business. Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on June 1st, 2021.
Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, is there any discussion on the minutes? If there is no discussion on the minutes, then I will make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second? Seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Citizens Fire Academy graduation.
So the chair will ask Councilmember Tuttle to join us in the front and to give some words.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for your time. This year, we held the 13th Annual Citizens Fire Academy. Part of the academy was designed to increase the understanding of the Wichita Fire Department and the emergencies that we hold. It was an opportunity for us to be with the citizens and really tell the story of the Wichita Fire Department and what we do. In this, they had the opportunity to see some of our the things that we do. They got to see how we responded to calls. They got to see how we worked on different types of emergencies, whether it was medical calls or fires or vehicle extrication. They also got to do a lot of hands-on with it. They got to do search and rescue. They got to look at medical, technical rescue. We also talked about hazardous materials and vehicle extrication. And they also got to learn about fire prevention and extinguisher training and engine company operations. We realized and we were grateful for the opportunity we had with them. All of them had very, very busy schedules, and the time that they took we were very appreciative of it and be able to share our story with them. One thing that was nice that I'll quickly share, that we hopefully start a new tradition with the Citizens Fire Academy, is they presented us with a plaque. And so this is an opportunity to thank them for what they did and their time and effort with the academy.
They're going to pass out the certificates in the chamber, but I just wanted to say a few words. I wanted to thank all of my fellow class participants for taking the time to be in the class. I found it to be a great experience and really enjoyed it and learned a great deal more about the great work that our Wichita Fire Department does. Also, a special thanks to the Wichita Fire Department. The instructors were great. I know that they took time away from their friends and their family to be there during the Tuesday nights that we met, so I'm grateful for that. And then I have my hat up here on my bench. Council members Bluebaugh, Fry, Claycomb, and I went through Fire Ops 101 back in 2019. You don't get a hat if you go through Citizens Fire Academy, only if you go through the Fire Ops 101, but it was just a special reminder again of the opportunities that we have to learn more about the service from our Wichita Fire Department. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Kevin.
Johnson, where's your hat?
I need to go through the Fire Ops 101.
Madam Clerk.
Public agenda. Ron Rosales, Economic Development at 21st Street and Broadway.
All right, so as we get into the public agenda, just a reminder, if you are willing to state your name and your address for the record, and also if you're on behalf on an organization. We try to limit to 5 minutes. If you go a little over, I usually let folks complete their thought. I don't want to cut anyone off, but we want to be respectful of time, so it's 5 minutes. And if you're new, the format, how this works, is it's really a time for the public to present to the council. It's really not a back and forth. So if you were to ask us questions, we want to make sure you get the full 5 minutes, so we will wait until the end before we were to respond to anything. We want to make sure the public gets the first 5 minutes, full 5 minutes, and that the council isn't, eating up some of those minutes. So we welcome everyone here. We're glad that we can actually gather after the type of year we had and to have proper public forum. So, sir, the floor is yours. Your time will start as soon as you begin.
Good morning, everybody. Mayor Whipple, Vice Mayor Johnson, members of the council. My name is Ron Rosales, and I represent the 6th District on the school board, as well as a 6th District citizen, resident, as Councilwoman Claycomb can tell you. So today, I'm here to present to you an opportunity for further economic development between the 21st Street and I-135 Broadway corridor. The opportunity is this. The corridor between I-135 and the intersection of 21st and Broadway needs to be improved in order to provide for a smoother flow of east and westbound traffic. Currently, this is a barrier that impedes on the economic development that many businesses have called this area of the city home. I speak on behalf of the many Mexican-American people who were born and raised in this community, myself included, and who are homeowners, business owners, and landlords, and that have made a living over the years despite this barrier. So in case you guys don't know, there's one of our icons of the north side there on 21st and Broadway is Connie's Mexico Cafe. And they've been there for over 50 years and have, made a business despite all this. So, and they're just one. In case you don't know, there's a lot of good restaurants in that area and grocery stores and so on and so forth. So anyway, just for your information on that. With private development going on at the intersection of 21st and Broadway, from renewed interest from Gene and Yolanda Camarena, the Basham family, and the Lopez family, it's time to look for solutions to make the east and westbound traffic flow better in order to sustain the many businesses that are within the city. In order to connect the northeast and northwest parts of our city and ensure economic stability, the issue of traffic flow barriers, and overall quality of life in this area requires a thorough study into this corridor. Personally, I see a lot of buses, school buses in particular. In case you didn't know, our school board allocated lots of money, millions of dollars for our transportation. And when I see a lot of school buses being impeded on this corridor, I know that our city could do better too. And that's just school buses. There's also a lot of empty buildings around that area. So the empty buildings have been empty for several years. And there's further economic development just that is waiting to happen there. Currently, there's support for federal infrastructure money that will be appropriated with the amount still being debated. Below is a quote from Senator Moran. This is from his March 29th newsletter. So I'll let you guys read that at your leisure. Just some ideas that hopefully we could understand and move forward. Having lived in this area my entire life, with the exception of being away for military service, I have seen growth such as Empower Evergreen, but I know there are better things to come. I know this council is committed to providing a quality of life for all its citizens. I look forward to sharing the ideas that the community has shared with me and the opportunity we have before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. I just want to mention that, so Mr. Rosales and I have spoken, and we have a meeting with the city engineer, with Gary Jansen, to talk about this. There have been some pretty extensive studies that have been done of this, and so we want to make sure we share those with Mr. Rosales and as we move forward.
Councilmember Bubak.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we've got a lot of block train issues in other parts of the city. Is this something that, if they are looking at some legislation, is this something we could potentially put on our legislation, on our agenda for next year to try to get some more attention to this?
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
See no further questions. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Bill Wentz, Solar Energy.
Welcome, sir.
My name is Bill Wentz. 77 years ago, something happened in Wichita. My mother gave birth to her only son, and he's here today. I came to speak to you on some very important issue, and that is related to a proposal that's been made to the council to organize a sustainability advisory group. My background is in engineering. I was educated at Wichita State, KU, on the faculty of Wichita State, teaching, doing research, first executive director of NIAR, Wichita State University. I want to remind you of a case history of an episode that happened a few years ago, where an advisory group provided leadership in avoiding the addition of a major coal plant in the state of Kansas. In 2006, an expansion of the Holcomb, Kansas coal facility, steam coal facility generating plant was proposed. 2,100 megawatt, 3 units were proposed to be added at Holcomb, Kansas. This would have been fueled by 3 100-car train loads of coal a day. Major impact, would have been the largest generating plant in the state of Kansas. We wondered why Holcomb. It turns out that the coal would have been mined in Wyoming, shipped by rail to Holcomb, burned to generate electricity using water resources in that area, and 85% of the energy generated would have been transmitted back to Colorado and other western states. And in fact, the transmission lines did not exist and do not exist today to carry major portions of electricity across the Kansas-Colorado border. The proposed plant required approval of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, KDHE, and the federal EPA. Fortunately, Governor Kathleen Sebelius and KDHE Director Ron Brimby recognized that the proposal would sacrifice Kansas resources to the benefit of other states and would bring major pollution to Kansas. Governor Sebelius organized a Kansas Energy and Environment Policy, KEEP, advisory group similar to what we're talking about here. She brought together private citizens, business leaders, and legislators into information sessions to review the Holcomb proposal and make recommendations. KEEP was chaired by Mr. Jack Pelton, who was CEO of Cessna at the time. And I was wondered why he would take time from being CEO of the company to do this. Then I learned that he grew up in Southern California. He was intimately familiar with air pollution problems in an industrial setting, city setting. At the height of the legislative hearings, I chatted with a legislator who supported the Holcomb coal. He asked, "You folk in Wichita aren't opposed to exporting airplanes for sale outside Kansas. Why are you opposed to exporting electricity?" I said, "We're not opposed to exporting electricity. We're opposed to importing pollution." After months of heated debates, President Obama recruited Governor Sebelius to go to Washington to serve as Secretary of Health and Human Services. When she left, Lieutenant Governor Mark Parkinson became governor. Parkinson was a Republican that the governor had recruited to be his running mate. At that time, Parkinson negotiated then a settlement between the state and the coal advocates. He negotiated a settlement in which they would agree to allow one, not three, but one plant at 895 megawatts versus three at 2,100 megawatts, a much cut down proposal. KDHE Director Rod Brimby was fired by Parkinson for refusing to approve the plan. Brimby, in fact, now serves as a public in the Health and Human Services in Connecticut. While the political battle raged, wind energy was gaining major acceptance, and wind farms were being constructed in eastern Colorado and Kansas, as well as other areas. The time delays that resulted from Sebelius and Brimby's and the KEEP group actions had fulfilled their purpose. The Holcomb coal episode had an ending for the environment. In January 2020, just a little over a year ago, 14 years after the initial application, the Holcomb group withdrew their application. Last year, wind energy generated more electricity in Kansas than any other form, the first time, and that will be a continuing trend. We will see in the next years a great expansion of solar energy because the costs are coming down. It's becoming easier to apply. Obviously, sustainability involves a larger range of issues than one coal plant, but I hope what the council will take is that advisory groups bringing together people from a broad sector to discuss issues as they make decisions.
So
More than 100 years ago, a Native American chief, Seattle, said, "We do not own this land. We do not own this land. We have it on loan from our grandchildren." Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk.
Fallon Rosenbaum, Wichita Sustainability Board.
Hi, good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hello, council members. My name is Pailan Rasinuvong. I live in 2920 South Davidson Street, Wichita, Kansas, 67210. I'm here today to voice my concerns on the progress towards making Wichita a clean city. I was born in Wichita, and I am a current resident of the city. And I'm currently 19 years old, and as an Asian American with immigrant parents, my parents would tell me stories of the living conditions of the cities in Thailand and Laos. Their families lived in poverty, and they struggled in finding essential necessities such as clean water. The air pollution in condensed cities like Bangkok, Thailand, has threatened their health many times before. And the beautiful beaches are filled with washed up plastic and trash that were thrown into the ocean. And you may be wondering, why am I speaking about another country and the issues that my parents have seen? This is such that past generations did not think of the impact their actions led towards harming the earth, and this is repeated everywhere. Plastic is everywhere. There is no denying that the usage of single-use plastic has increased significantly compared to those of my parents. There's plastic and trash seen on the streets of my own neighborhood, and it's in the river and the parks of our city, Wichita. The problems seen in the cities my parents grew up in are now present in the city of my own. I am not a professional, and I admit I am still learning about sustainability and climate change. However, these concerns are getting worse, and they cannot be ignored or delayed any longer. As much as an individual can be aware of and prevent using single-use plastic, it's still hard to avoid in this world. It is in the power of corporations and officials that have power or control that will make the biggest impact on these issues. Many people don't get the privilege to turn their heads away from the effects of climate change. In the current situation with COVID-19, some people are not going to want to worry about where their single-use plastic goes. They're going to worry about how to feed their families and keep the roofs above their heads. I want it to be known that there are young people like me who are aware of it, since it is our future. If we don't work toward the cleaner earth, these issues will not only affect the future of my 13-year-old little sister, but also the future of my 14-month-old nephew. I don't want them to have to deal with the negative effects of climate change either. Everyone deserves the rights to clean air and water in this city. I am simply asking from the Council of Wichita to listen to the voices of the youth and to understand their concerns. Forming a sustainability board is the first step in showing your care for this community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
J. Chavez, Wichita Sustainability Board. Excuse me.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Jade Chavez. I live in the 4th Congressional District here in Wichita. I'm here today to urge you to continue your efforts towards a greener Wichita by forming a sustainability board. I'm a Wichita local. I've lived here for all my life thus far, but like many other people my age, I do not have plans to stay in this city. I cannot envision a future in which I will be satisfied living in a city with a lack of environmental accountability and optimism for social progress. My generation is becoming aware of the genuine threat that climate change imposes on us. So many of the things that we see as normal are not sustainable. They harm the world we live in and the people around us. We could be a carbon-neutral city, powered by the renewable sources at our fingertips. We now have access to monumental, irrefutable research about the effects that humans have on the ecology and climate that we are affecting. There needs to be investments made into the infrastructure of our beloved city before we will not have a city to sustain. I do not claim to be a professional in sustainability, but by working and living in the community, I know that those closest to the problems are also closest to the solutions. Many youth, including myself, lack experience but not ideas. Kansas relies so heavily on fossil fuels when we have an abundance of natural resources. For example, because of our state's access to vast lands and turbines, our city has the potential to be entirely powered by wind energy. Alternatively to wind, we have access to one of the 10 sunniest states in the country. We could prioritize our unused rooftops as passive and endless sources of solar power. In addition to renewable energy, I would also love to see free recycling or government-funded food composting to benefit both concerned citizens and farmers in need of fertilizer. These are all things you could be proud of implementing in your time of office, straying from the normalcy and the monotony of slow governmental action to push and advocate for our well-being as young citizens. So many of us have dreams of having children, but it isn't a consideration in my mind anymore for fear of the world that they may be born into. We often talk about climate change in regards to our future, our great-grandchildren, but we are suffering with many of the issues now. Professionals with real experience could provide support and indelible guidance towards a rectified future. We must invest in these sources now before we have to pay for the consequences of the system that needs to be redressed. I have so much genuine hope and love for the direction the city is going in. The arts downtown are flourishing, and I truly do appreciate the care and attention to preserving our city's architecture. Additionally, the electric buses and greenery are all a great start. I understand that this year must have been hard for all of you, as people expect a lot during a recovery period in a pandemic. But I know that you are capable of making a great change and forging a new path to attract an abundant growth and youth in a city with so much potential. In order for the youth that you wish to hear from to stay in Wichita, you must, as our elected officials, provide the care and attention to a livable future for our generation. We ask you, as constituents, to relay our messages to those above you, to listen to our concerns and voice them, so our message is also heard. We urge you to form a sustainability board of independent professionals to provide counsel to you, to neighboring areas, and to the citizens of Wichita and neighboring areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. City Manager, I just wanted to ask, we directed staff to look at creating a sustainability board and bringing back a recommendation to us, right?
That's correct. And we have a meeting with the Environmental Finance Center, I think within the next week, and we're going to discuss that with them to get an idea on the qualifications and backgrounds for members of a sustainability board.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
So, also, just to the folks who have been coming in to talk about the sustainability board and the goals towards, I think, a more sustainable policy at the city level. Vice Mayor and I met with a member of who I believe is leadership in this goal, and we want to set up other meetings. I think that when we have the 5-minute type public forum, that is really good when I think people are trying to express values to us. We do value this, and we want to get to that next step, which is discussing achievable goals. You know, what do we want to see over the next year or more when it comes to reaching some of these shared goals, which will allow us, I think, to figure out, once we get to the point of a board, who would serve on that board. So the having a board just to have a board, I don't think is what anyone wants. I think we want to see actual action. So I would encourage folks who have been meeting here to also reach out and set up meetings with myself and other members of the council so that we can have, I think, a more in-depth discussion on some of the goals that we can look at as we move forward. So please reach out to us. Madam Clerk.
Celeste Brissette, Star Bond projects falling short. Who's paying?
Morning.
Morning. My name is Celeste Brissette. There are several problems with STAR projects. These projects can fail, leaving taxpayers on the hook for bond debt payments. STAR bonds are state tax and revenue bonds. Cities sell these bonds to provide cash for a tourism project. Bonds are paid back over 20 years with the sales tax from the development, money that could have been spent on health care, higher education, or quality of life. A major weakness in STAR bonds is the economic analysis. The 2015 State Post Audit found that cities creating their own numbers may be biased and problematic. Wichita's new ball stadium consultant, Development Strategies, came up with one set of revenue numbers, and city staff used higher numbers. Actual revenue is now half of what city staff projected. This will make it harder to pay off the STAR bonds for the new stadium. A second problem is Wichita's non-compliance with tourism numbers. 20% of visitors to STAR bond projects should come from another state, and 30% should come from more than 100 miles away. But the Commerce Department doesn't track whether STAR bond projects attract new spending, and Wichita doesn't track tourism numbers for these projects, making the project and the tourism dollars hard to figure out. Another problem is that 50% of project costs must be private investments, but that's difficult to predict. The 2020 Star Bond Report, which I read, lists Jim Corrick's Fairfield Inn as a private investment, but our hotel guest tax helped fund this project, making it a partial public investment, not private. Another problem is the Star Band area can expand, capturing sales tax even after the initial bonds are paid off. Riverwalk District has expanded from Phase 1 in 2007 to Phase 2 in 2015 and to Phase 3 in 2018. The revenue from the East Bank is actually paying the new stadium bond debt to cover weaker than expected revenue. Someone mentioned they thought taxpayers were not responsible for failed private development, but that's not true. City of Topeka taxpayers are having to pony up for the troubled Heartland Star Bond project. Community Improvement District bonds, Tax Increment Finance District bonds, and general obligation bonds can put the taxpayer at risk. We have to cover this debt, and the city's bond credit rating has dropped recently. That is a troublesome trend. Here's some developments Wichita taxpayers had to cover. Waterwalk, public funding cost $41 million. 29 acres were rented for $1 per year for 99 years. TIF district bond debt is $8 million and currently in arrears. The city has received zero income from Waterwalk profits. Gander Mountain cost $6 million in star bonds to build. In 2019, King of Freight moved in and said they would bring 400 jobs, paying $50,000 per year and $60,000 in parking lot rent. 1 year later, they walked away. Total income received to date, zero. Fairfield Inn Hotel, $4 million in hotel guest tax were diverted for Jim Corrick's Fairfield Inn. He sold the hotel. Bond debt payments are escalating with the $2 million balloon payment due soon. Hyatt Hotel, private development went bust and taxpayers began paying off the $16 million bond debt. The hotel was sold at a $12 million loss to Ruffin. The hotel sale proceeds went to finance street repairs, which should come out of our operating expenses, and $1 million was given to each of you city council districts instead of returning funds to taxpayers. Kenmar TIF, created in 2008 to revitalize the area but failed. Douglas and Hillside TIF, failed in 2016. Public land taxpayers owned was then sold in Delano Catalyst site to help with debt payments. K96 in Greenwich, $35 million in star bonds, which have been refinanced but not significantly paid down. The city contributes $1,134,000 for debt payments, which is paid for by taxpayers. Riverside TIF, approved this year, $700,000 in public funds for sewer upgrades. Our public land along the Arkansas River was sold cheaply to these developers. TIF bond debt was issued instead of requiring the developers to use special assessments. A state post audit is going to evaluate star bonds. The scope of this audit is to review incentives, effectiveness, and economic fiscal impact. Why haven't you done this? You should complete a follow-up cost-benefit analysis using actual 5-year numbers to calculate net present value, internal rate of return, and payback. The information I just shared was not easy to obtain. I sometimes received information that was incorrect or mislabeled, but I do appreciate staff time in answering my questions. Transparency should be a goal of this administration. It shouldn't be so difficult to review project finances. There are limited taxpayer resources. When you commit tax revenue to a project, you should follow up to see if the money was spent wisely. That's called accountability. Save Century
Your 5 minutes is up. You finish your thought.
I'll finish my thought. We're having an open house Sunday at 3330 West Douglas, and all the information I've shared with you today that took time to research is available for anyone to see, and I am open for questions and discussion at any time. Are there any questions? I stand for questions.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Bob, do we have any information on some of what the speaker talked about as far as star bonds and debt, or any of that we can report out on to answer some of that?
I've got some staff members available if you'd like just some general information or specific information regarding the Star Bond District.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson, if you have specific questions, we can work
Yeah.
to get those.
Thanks, Scott. So we heard that the Star Bond projects weren't necessarily paying out. We're making $0. Is that accurate? Do you have any data on that?
You know, I'm gonna ask our finance director, Mark Manning, and our bond counsel, Joe Norton, they've been looking at that information based on a conversation with Celeste, and they're happy to provide some detail about the performance.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, so hopefully I can try to address a few of her comments. As far as star bonds, let me address the stadium star bonds first. The stadium star bonds, we have debt service on that. We've had debt service since 2019. And currently at the state of Kansas, star bonds flow first to the state of Kansas, then they're paid to our trustee to make debt service. Currently, we have about $6.9 million at the state of Kansas for debt service on the stadium star bonds. That should cover the next 3 years of debt service on the stadium, regardless of any collections the city makes. And obviously, the city continues to collect money in the Star Bond District. But as of right now, like I said, we have enough money at the state of Kansas to pay the next 3 years of debt service on the stadium star bonds.
Just to clarify that, if tomorrow we make no income on on a Windsor Stadium, no income at all because we have another pandemic, God forbid, or something like that, we would still have enough money, or the state would, to pay for the 3 years of debt service for those bonds.
Yes, sir. If we don't collect another dime, we have 3 years of coverage at the state of Kansas as of today on the stadium.
Thank you. I did have another question.
Mark, maybe before you leave, could you also talk about the Water Walk star bonds, the original star bonds, and the fact that those are paid off, and then also the performance of the K-96 in Greenwich?
Yeah. Like the speaker mentioned, we've had the East Bank Star Bond District since 2008, and we funded a number of improvements from that. Improvements around the Keeper of the Plains, some at River Vista. All of those, we issued bonds in all of those cases because that provides maximum flexibility. We have paid off all of those bonds. In fact, in a lot of cases, we paid those bonds off in 2 or 3 years. I think River Vista, we issued bonds, we paid them off in 2 years. So we have no debt for anything from the original project plan. As far as K-96, we issued $71 million worth of debt in 2018, I believe. That was issued in term debt, which simplistically means that we pay it off at 3 different time periods, 2023, 2027, and 2031, 32, I think. So the first batch was due in 2023. That was approximately $21 million. We've already paid that off. In fact, we've started paying on the 2027 batch, and we paid about $2 million in principal on the debt that is coming due in 2027. So I would tell you that we're actually ahead on the K-96 Star Bond District.
So just for clarifications, our payment is due in 2023, and we've already paid off the payment that's due in 2 years.
That is correct, sir. Yes, sir.
So is there, with the K-96 Star Bond project, is there any indication that it's not being successful? It sounds like if we're ahead on payments that we're getting what we expected. Is there any concern?
As of today, we're in good shape on K-96 in Greenwich. Like I said, the money flows to the trustee. They make interest payments. They take any extra Star Bond revenue, and they make principal payments. And again, they've already paid off the 2023 debt that was due, and we're working on the 2027 debt right now.
Are there any of the Star Bond projects that are failing at this point in our city?
Not that I'm aware of.
You would be aware, though. You're the financial person. So is there any payments not being made, any hiccups, I guess, as far as the numbers go that come to your attention that keep you up at night?
Not at this time, no. And,
guys, feel free to grill Mr. Manning if you like. Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mark. And this may be for Joe or the manager or Scott, but I just also one comment that I caught, and I was trying to take notes, but one, and I'm not sure what's going on in Topeka. Apparently, there might be a situation where things aren't going as well and the residents have to pay back. But we talked about this significantly last week when we were talking about the 96 Greenwich corridor because of Topgolf. And I asked the question a couple times, and in the spirit of redundancy, it was always answered the same. If there was ever a situation, the residents are not responsible for paying back the debt. There wouldn't be any cost or risk to the city. Is that correct? Can you explain that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, that's correct, at K96 and Greenwich. Now, I will tell you, on the Stadium Star bonds, the covenants require the city manager to include an appropriation for that debt in his budget proposal. You are not required to make that appropriation, but he is required to include an appropriation to cover the annual debt service in his annual budget, which he did last year. But again, that doesn't mean that the city council has to make that appropriation.
Because it's state money that we're capturing at the local level that would normally go into the state coffers that the state reissues back into that particular district.
That is correct.
So it's not money coming out of the general fund here in the city. It's our firefighters, our other folks, they're not at risk with these economic development. And that's why the city or the state, in addition to the city, needs to have an economic analysis to approve this. A third-party economic analysis, not just us voting with our gut, right?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
accurate?
You are correct, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Is there any other questions?
No.
Ma'am, you have already had your 5 minutes. We've given you extra minutes. Ma'am, you don't have the floor. Please can we maintain decorum. You have 5 minutes. You've already... Ma'am, when you signed up to speak today, it was to star bond projects falling short. That is different. That is the topic we're talking about. When you have 5 minutes, we have to maintain decorum, which means you come up, you present, and then you contact us later if you want to talk deeper into this. And I think that if we don't follow decorum, we run risk of wasting other people's time who have came out here to talk. So with that, Madam Clerk, next person, please.
Consent agenda items 1 through 13.
Has every member had a chance to review the consent agenda? If so, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? If there is no discussion on the consent agenda, then I will make a motion to pass the consent agenda as it has been presented.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll, members cast the vote. After receiving 7 votes, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk, 7 yeas.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated June 7th, 2021.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Hannah Lang, Department of Finance, here to present the June 7th Board of Bids. First engineering bid we have is Manhole Rehab and Recon Project 2021 Set 1. Mayor Specialty Services for $55,480. Paving Canyon Monterey to serve Auburn Lakes Edition Phase 3. Kansas Paving $435,769.80. Ammunition deferred to June 14th Board of Bids. 43,000 GVWR cab and chassis multiple line striping machine. MB Companies for the base bid of $437,777. White and yellow pavement marking paint deferred to June 14th. Preventative maintenance and inspection of chillers, boilers, and pumps. The Waldinger Corporation for Group 1 for $7,002. Four-wheel drive articulated 3.5 yard wheel loader deferred to June 14th. Cascade Pump and Motor DXP Enterprises for $139,214. Replace leaking ozone valves Vector Controls for $136,454. This is our purchasing procurement website, as well as our current open request for proposals. That is the Board of Bids recommendations. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions of staff? There's no questions of staff, thank you. Is there any input from the public? If there is no public input, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there any discussion on the item? If there is no discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk, open the roll. Result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Petitions for public improvements.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The petitions for your consideration today, all petitions represent 100% of the respective improvement district, and all petitions are valid per Kansas statute. In February, April, and May of 2000, let me back up a second. In February of 2019, April of 2021, and May of 2020, I apologize, I'm not sure why those are out of order, City Council approved water, sewer, drainage, and paving improvements to serve Pike Addition, which is north of Maple, east of 167th Street West. The developers submitted new and revised petitions to divide and expand the projects to meet current market conditions. For your approval today are new petitions for water, stormwater drain, sanitary sewer, and paving, and revised petitions also for water, stormwater drain, sanitary sewer, and paving. Staff recommends City Council approve the revised and new petitions and budgets, adopt the amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Are there questions of staff? If there's no questions for the staff, is there input from the public? If there is no input from the public, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on the item? See no discussion on the item. I will make the motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the new and revised petitions and budgets, adopt the new and amend resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk, open the roll. Members cast the vote. Result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, Millennia Productions, LLC.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for a speculative industrial building from Millennia Productions, LLC. In December of 2017, the City Council approved a speculative industrial and flex building program. For the industrial side, there is a requirement that the building be at least 100,000 square feet and that leases would not be divisible below 25,000 square feet. The building has to be a minimum of 28-foot clear height. Tilt-up concrete is preferred. After the City Council approval, the developer has to begin construction within 120 days and complete the building within 15 months of the City Council approval. The developer must use industrial revenue bonds to achieve a 95% abatement for the first 5 years and a 50% abatement for the second 5 years if the property is at least 50% leased at the 5-year mark. There will be no abatement for land in this project. 4 projects have been approved under the current speculative industrial policy. WHAM Capital, which is the Michaelis family, was approved in May of 2018 for a 100,000 square foot building at 35th Street North and Webb Road. That facility is fully leased at this time. Iron Horse, which is Jeff Lang, was approved in December of 2018 for a 100,000 square foot building at Seneca and MacArthur. That building does not have any leases today, but has been experiencing good leasing activity. Additionally, Steve Barrett and Ivan Crossland with Webb Industrial were approved for a 140,000 square foot building at 40th Street North in Tobin. That facility is leased to Amazon today. And then they were approved just last year for a second facility for Webb Industrial 2, excuse me, at 40th and Tobin, which is 113,000 square feet. That facility is under construction today and is experiencing good leasing activity, but does not have any leases today. Millennia Productions is owned by Michael Lee and Havon Lee. Their primary business is the manufacturing, distribution, and sales of beauty products. They purchased the business and the facility and had excess land on which they intend to build this speculative industrial building. They intend to build a 128,000 square foot building with a total investment of $6.5 million at Tobin and 37th Street North. In this aerial, you can see 37th Street on the bottom of the aerial running from left to right, and Webb Road running from top to bottom on the right-hand side. The area outlined in red is where the new facility would be built. The value of 1 year of a 95% abatement based on $6.5 million investment in the new facility would be approximately $157,000 for all taxing jurisdictions and approximately $40,000 for the city. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.43 to 1 for the city overall, 1.38 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.54 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Michael Lee, who's the developer, is here and can answer any questions specific to the project, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
All right, is there any questions for staff? See none, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak to this? No, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there any discussion about the item? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Tim,
That's a question for staff.
Yeah, just bringing it back. My only question is, would you say this program has been successful? I know you said that.
It has been successful. We have been passed over frequently by site selectors who are working with companies that often don't even look at Wichita, because it's great that we don't have a lot of vacant large industrial buildings, but it's also a challenge that we don't have any vacant large industrial buildings, because when site selectors are looking, they often pass us over. The requirements that we have in terms of building a minimum of 100,000 square feet, a minimum of 28-foot clear, those are driven by projects that we missed out on because site selectors said, you don't have these certain types of buildings with this criteria available, so we're not even looking at Wichita. So to have these buildings built, and these aren't the only ones that have been, the 4 that I've mentioned aren't the only ones that have been built as speculative industrial buildings. Under a previous policy, we've had, at least another, Barrett and Crossland have built 250,000 square feet at 29th and Ohio that are fully leased. In 2008, they built 115,000 square feet on Pawnee west of Seneca that was fully leased. So there have been other projects that have been built under previous policies as well, and they've all been leased up. So this has been successful and has provided us with larger speculative industrial buildings so that we can meet the requirements of site selectors that are looking for large vacant space.
Awesome, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, if there is no further discussion, then I will recognize the council member from District 2, Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you very much. Just a thank you to staff for working so hard to make this come to fruition. And I'd like to thank Melanie Productions LLC for investing in our community. We appreciate it, and especially in District 2. So I'm excited to move that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor. Clerk, open the roll. Members cast the vote. With a result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Revised 2021-2022 Annual Action Plan.
Good morning, Director Stang.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Sally Stang with the Housing and Community Services Department for the record. Feel like a little deja vu here. Just a month ago, we had you approve the annual action plan, and we are already back for a revision. So we do receive an annual allocation of funds from community development funds from HUD. Those funds are to fund activities that align with city goals of creating livable and sustainable communities, to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and affordable housing. Those funds include Community Development Block Grant, Home Funds, and the Emergency Solutions Grants. The planning process is a two-step every year. We have the 5-year consolidated plan, and then we have an annual plan that defines the allocations and activities we're going to achieve in that program year. We're working in the 3rd annual action plan, the 3rd program year, and that runs from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. On May 4th, the council approved the 2022 annual action plan and authorized the submission to HUD. And the plan identified programs and activities to be funded during the program year with $2,925,565 of CDBG funding, $1,519,843 in home funds, and $250,208 in emergency solutions grants funding. On May 14th, like 10 minutes before we were going to hit the submit button of the plan, we were notified by HUD that they had made an error in the formula allocation calculation for our CDBG program. The correction of that error results in the city receiving an additional $43,111 in CDBG funding for our Year 3 action plan. So the revised CDBG grant for 2021-22 is now $2,968,676. Activities funded with CDBG must meet a national objective of benefiting low-mod income persons, prevent slum and blight, or address urgent community needs, used for any of the 101 eligible CDBG spending activities, but not less than 70% of the spending must benefit low to moderate income persons. HUD instructed us to, just moments before hitting that submit button, to revise its 2021-22 annual action plan to include the corrected CDBG grant amount. And staff recommends utilization of the additional funding for the land bank activity, as that is kind of an unknown as to what the expenses are going to be. So we are recommending that $43,111 increase the land bank activity funding from $334,316 to $377,427. We have 7 years actually to expend that funding if we allocate it in that bucket, and we'd also have the option to reallocate it if it weren't needed to another approved activity within our plan. So the land bank pilot, we're looking at putting $377,427. The funding would be used for property acquisition, assemblage, title clearance, site improvements, carrying cost, program delivery. The property acquired through the land bank would be utilized for affordable housing to meet one of the national objectives required by CDBG funding, and it would further the initiatives of the Places for People plan approved by the council on June 4th, 2019. With that amendment or change to our funding, HUD issued a waiver to our public comment period for this amendment. Normally, we need to put it out for 30 days. HUD mandated we put it out for a 3-day public comment period. We had it out for 5, and we received no public comments to this change. There is no impact to the general fund. The development of the consolidated plan and the annual action plan are required in order for us to receive the federal funds. And it's recommended that the City Council close the public hearing, approve the revised 2021-2022 annual action plan, and authorize the submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and authorize the necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions.
Any questions of staff? Well done. Is there input from the public? 7 people in the public. See none. With that, we will bring discussion back to the bench. Their discussion, Councilmember Johnson, or Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to a personal conflict, I will be abstaining from this vote.
Noted. Other discussion? If there is no other discussion, then the clerk will open up the roll. Members cast the vote.
Mayor, we'll need a motion.
There was no motion.
That's a good point. We would need a motion before we need a vote, don't we? And I'm going to go ahead and make that motion.
Second.
Well, it's a big motion. Recommended action to close a public hearing, no, excuse me, that's the next one. Close a public hearing, approve the revised 2021-2022 annual action plan, authorize submission of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and authorize the necessary signatures. I believe the gentleman from District 4 has seconded.
Second.
With that, clerk open the roll. The result of 6 yeas to 1 abstain. The abstention is Vice Mayor Johnson. The motion does pass, and the item does pass. Madam Clerk.
Repair or removal of dangerous and unsafe structure.
Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Kaylin Nethercott with Neighborhood Inspection with MABCD. We're here today to talk about the property at 749 North Minneapolis Avenue. Just a quick update. This property began the process on March 1st, 2021, when the BCSA held hearings on 9 different properties. Since that time, 1 property has been demolished by owner, 1 has been repaired, 1 has been processed as an emergency demolition, and 1 will be presented for your review at a later date. 4 of the 9 properties were also presented for your review last month. This particular property is located in District 1. It's been vacant for an unknown number of years and has continued to deteriorate. The structure is vacant with rotting and missing siding. It's badly worn in the roofing area, has many. The soffits, fascia, and trim are rotting, and the front and rear porches are deteriorating. The photos show that exterior illegal dumping has continued and worsened. MABCD has assisted police with this location on 3 different occasions. The property was placarded in August 2017. A UCC was issued, and the property has been the subject of environmental court. All attempts at compliance have failed. One of the owners of the property did attend the Board of Code Standards and Appeals meeting on March 1st, at which time that board granted an extension to April 5th. The owner has not re-engaged with us since that time. Property taxes were paid in March 2021 and remain delinquent in the amount of $110.15. It's been boarded twice by MABCD staff, and a nuisance case remains open. I would also note that an abatement effort was begun at this property and stopped by an unknown individual. As you can see from the photos, no repairs have been made, and the premise conditions include bulky waste, tires, mattresses, collapsed fencing, and tall grass and weeds.
Is there questions of staff? Is there input from the public? You can come on down here, and pretty much we ask if you are willing to state your name and your address, and you will be able to speak for 5 minutes. Oh, we'll wait till you come back. We stream these online, so we want to make sure the microphone's working. So,
my name is Gladys Canada, and I live at 3201. No, I don't. I don't live at 3201. I live at 4214 South Greenhaven, Wichita. You need my zip code too, 67216. I do own the property, and I have not done anything to it. I will admit to that. But as far as that trash, someone has been throwing the trash over there and dumping tires over there, and it's expensive. And I just haven't had the funds or the time to do anything with it right now, but I am working on it. I did pay the taxes up to stop them from tearing it down, and I do plan on, I go to court on the 30th on the house, so I do plan on having some kind of process, getting something done to the house. I just haven't had the time, so, but I do plan on correcting that. I just need a little more time. When the pandemic broke out, I wasn't able to take off from work, and then I stayed away from everyone because I do work at the doctor's office, and I don't know what I was exposed to. So I did kind of stay away from everyone, and so I just haven't had time. But now everything is kind of settling down, and I can have the time now. I just have to do it on the weekends or whatever.
So, Vice Mayor Johnson, you had a question for?
Thanks, Mayor. So this house has had a housing case for 3 years and 10 months.
Yeah, so within that 3 years and 10 months, like I lost my sister. Then 3 months later, I lost my mother. Just last year in July, I lost a brother. July 17th, 10 days later from that, I lost another brother. And then in September, I lost a sister, another sister. So I've just been dealing with stuff and everything's just been coming at me all at once. So I just haven't, my mind wasn't right and I'm just now getting back to myself. Everything is just now starting to calm down, but I've had a rough 3 years and I know that's not an excuse, but I just kind of stepped away from everything. So yeah, I did kind of shut down a little bit. I did.
Well, I'm definitely sorry to hear that. I appreciate you paying the taxes up to date. You just have a little bit left. When it comes to repairs, that structure needs some significant repairs. I drive by there quite a bit, and your point about the illegal dumping, once someone knows they can dump there, they continue to do so. So I've had reports about that house. I think I've even sent in some reports about that house myself, adjacent to the park. So what type of timeline are you thinking to get that house up to code? It's expensive.
I'm thinking I probably need I'm thinking about 3 months, to be honest with you. If I don't have 3 months, that's fine. You just tell me how much time you're willing to give me and I will start working on it. And I have been talking to someone about selling the property. And if they want to go ahead and fix it up, I will sell the property to them and let them go ahead and fix it up. So, I know I do need to get that trash away from in front of there, but yeah, someone has been using it. And I looked into the pricing of getting the tires, and it's like $5 a tire to have the tires removed from the property. So that's my biggest issue is the money for the tires. I did reach out to the Atwater Center about a dumpster, but they said that they're not going to have one in that neighborhood until August. So I have been trying to reach out. I did reach out to Mennonite Housing, but they said since no one was living in the house, that they couldn't help me do anything with the house. So I have been trying to reach out to resources to get the house brought up to code, but I just haven't had any luck with that.
Okay. And you say 3 months?
3 months.
That's a significant amount of work.
If I don't get it done in 3 months, I'll sell it. Give me 3 months to either get it done or sell it.
I know, just a question for staff, I guess, if Vice Mayor would indulge. I don't know if you could sell it in 3 months if this doesn't work out. I'm pretty sure we would proceed with the plans to move forward with this today, which
I've been getting offers on the house. I've had 3 people reach out to me trying to borrow the property as is. And I did tell them that the property was in bad shape, and I did tell them that I would get back with them after I get legal stuff taken care of. So I do have a couple of phone numbers who's willing to buy that property.
Okay. It's a lot of work, but one thing I know is any extension I will continue to hear from the neighborhood, and we'll continue to see illegal dumping there, and I could give you that time, but some of the conditions that would be a part of that would be making sure that property stays clean. And right now it's going to be really expensive just to get rid of all of that stuff on the property. Because I just saw, I think, another 20 tires dumped over there last week maybe. So do you feel it's worth it to pay for cleaning all of that up right now and having 90 days, as you asked, to then pay additional dollars to bring that house up to code?
And like I say, if not, I will sell it. I will sell it. I will call the guy when I leave from here and sell it, ask him to come take a look at it, and whatever he's offering, he can buy it.
My only concern about that, and I feel like I might do that for you today, but my only concern is someone else buys that and it stays like that, and then we start a new housing case, and then the neighborhood continues to suffer. Because not everyone who purchases those properties actually does anything with them. Some folks just hold on to them, and then Kaylin and our inspectors are back out there again, and we're back in front of council in a year or so.
Well, let me see what I can get done in 3 months.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you. Ms. Gladys? Is that
Yes.
correct? You mentioned in your statement, did you have a court hearing or a court date? What is that specifically?
For the stuff, for the trash on the property.
Okay.
So
And when is that date
the 30th,
of this month?
yes.
Okay.
So I have to have that cleaned up by the 30th.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Bubak.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just trying to offer some, I just wanted to offer you a little bit of advice. I'm a real estate agent as well, and if you're working with someone to possibly buy the property for you, do you think maybe there'd be an opportunity to, if you could get it under contract, to have them put in a contract that within 30 days of you signing the contract, they would agree to get the tires and all the debris off the property, and then you should be able to close it maybe 40 or 50 days? Just some advice I'm throwing out there so that you could get, it sounds like a really big project to accomplish in 90 days, but I'd like to see you be able to get some money from it if you could sell it, and maybe there'd be an opportunity there to see if someone would take care of that for you and put some money in your pocket for the property.
Okay.
Councilmember Sorella.
Thank you, Mayor. Caitlin, did you say the abatement process was stopped once already?
Yes, it was.
Is there any more information about why it was stopped and what was done?
It was an unknown individual who asked us to cease cleaning up the property, and so at that point, it was referred back to court, which is the pending court date in June. So it was a regular abatement and not an administrative search warrant abatement, which is why they were able to halt that. Okay. I would just, FYI for mayor and council, this particular parcel at this time is flagged in our permitting system that at this time, the only permit that can be pulled on that is a wrecking permit. And we do that simply to prevent partial repairs. People can't change hands quickly and come in and pull a building permit. We would like to, whatever happens, whatever your decision is, we know that we're going to have discussions with either Ms. Gladys or whomever she sells it to conduct some interior inspections and help them determine the full scope of work and what permits and licensed contractors they'll need to plan to have to do that work.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Earlier we were talking, this isn't a floodplain, correct?
Yes, it is.
That's my question.
Is there further questions? Thank you. Is there further discussion? There's no further discussion, then the chair will recognize Vice Mayor Johnson of District 1.
Thanks, Mayor. It has been quite a while since I have wordsmithed these motions, so I need some help here. I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and then we'll try to word this. So the young lady has said she would need 90 days, and staff has discussed working with her to understand the permits and everything she needs. It's probably been 2 years since I made a motion like this, but I would like to give her the 90 days to come up with some form of solution, whether it's fixing the house up or selling it. But I would prefer that if at 90 days that the new taxes and special assessment is not paid up and that nothing has happened at the property, that it not come back to council and just go through with the demolition process. And I forgot how to word all of that, so.
So it seems like,
It's pretty good.
I'll recap. 90 days for a solution, staff's help with advice, taxes, special assessments, and significant improvement of the property needs to be ongoing, I guess is.
Complete or it would go through with the dangerous and unsafe structure process.
I also would remind council, just not to interrupt a motion in second, but owners always have the opportunity to demolish on their own as well. And sometimes after we speak with them at length on the scope of work that's repaired, that's required to bring it back into useful service, they will opt to do that. So that could be one of the outcomes in this 90 days as well.
I think your motion would read something like this, and you can certainly correct me, that you move that the item be deferred for 90 days, subject to the owner developing a plan to dispose of the property or to remedy the violations on the property. Additionally, that all special assessments and taxes need to be paid up to date. If that occurs, then the matter would proceed. If those conditions are not met, then the condemnation would go ahead and be approved.
Yes. I could not.
And don't make me repeat that.
Thanks, Sharon.
Well, that would be my motion, being that I couldn't write fast enough to get all of that, but that is my motion.
The motion is to accept the recommendation, the staff's, legal staff's recommendation of a motion. So
that's why you're the mayor. Thank you, Mayor. That is my motion.
And thus now our clerk can go back and ensure that everything is, though of course you probably already got it. But if that's the motion, I will recognize, to speak to the motion, Councilmember Claycomb.
I just have a question of Kaylin. Yes. Can you explain, if I understood you right, the only permit that can be pulled at this time is a wrecking permit?
Yes, we have that flagged in our system because that encourages conversations. If the intent is to repair or remodel, we want to make sure that we have our chief building official inside the structure first to do a full assessment and to work with the owner and potential contractors on scope of work.
Okay, so that means that they could get another type of permit if they meet our criteria.
They could. Okay. But we want to be part of that conversation.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I will second the motion. So the motion has been seconded. Clerk roll members cast the vote. So to 7 yeas, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zone 2021-6 with CON 2021-14. City zone change from general commercial and multifamily to general industrial, and a conditional use to allow for limited indoor recycling of computers, appliances, equipment, and machinery generally located 1,200 feet east of South Broadway Avenue and 1 block north of East Lincoln Street at the northeast corner of St. Francis Avenue and East Morris Street.
Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Scott Wadle from the Planning Department. This case is an application for a zoning change and a conditional use for 3 parcels located near the intersection of St. Francis and Morris Street. This case is on the non-consent agenda because the District Advisory Board and Planning Commission recommendations differ. And the way that they differ is with regards to this property at the southeast corner of Morris and St. Francis. In terms of background and existing conditions, the applicant has submitted the application in order to expand their existing recycling business, which you can see located here and also down here. 2 of the subject site parcels are zoned GC, General Commercial. I'll show that on this slide. So the one's in pink. And 1 is zoned B, Multifamily, which is the property in brown. In terms of the surrounding properties to the south and west of the subject site are zoned B, Multifamily, and developed with single-family residences. You can see the zoning here, and here's an aerial. Properties to the south and east are zoned GC, General Commercial, and developed with a range of commercial uses, mostly warehouses, office, storage, and a service garage, shown here. Properties to the north and east of the subject site are zoned limited industrial and developed with industrial uses. In terms of the recommendations and public input, the public hearing for this case was held at the May 6th Planning Commission. The Planning Commission voted 12-0-1 to recommend approval of the request as submitted by the applicant, with 16 conditions which are listed in the staff report. No members of the public spoke against the application. The District Advisory Board for District 3 reviewed the application and voted to recommend approval 601, different than what the applicant had requested, but with the same conditions. No members of the public spoke against the application at the meeting. In terms of differences between the two recommendations, it is focused solely on this parcel located here at the southeast corner. The Planning Commission recommendation is to allow for this property to be used for indoor recycling activities, and the applicant proposes to construct a building for this to take place on this parcel. The configuration is shown in the proposed site plan by the applicant. The District Advisory Board recommendation would not allow this parcel to be used for indoor recycling. Instead, it would approve a conditional use for ancillary parking with landscaping and screening for a parking lot to be constructed on the site. There were no protests submitted for this case. The recommended action is to adopt the findings of the Planning Commission to approve the requested rezoning and the conditional use for indoor recycling operation, to place the ordinance on the first reading, to authorize the necessary signatures, and to instruct the city clerk to publish the ordinance after approval of the second reading. This action requires a simple majority of 4 of 7 votes. And with that, I'll take you through some of the images. So here's the aerial. Here's the zoning map. Here's the map from the Wichita Future Growth Concept Map. It's a little closer zoomed in. You can see it's a mix of different uses, including commercial, industrial. This is a site plan submitted by the applicant. It shows the proposed building on the property at the southeast corner of Morris and St. Francis. Parking lot to the north, their existing building, and existing buildings a little bit further to the east. Again, there were no protests submitted for this application. Here are photos of the site. You can see they were taken quite some time ago with snow, but this is their existing facility. This is the property, the parcel located at the southeast corner. There's the aerial. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions of staff? Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, so the only two differences between the two recommendations from MAPC and MAPD is that MAPC added number 16, correct? Added that one condition to keep the south lot be multifamily residential, correct?
In terms of the differences, great question. The difference is really, in terms of the conditions, there aren't any differences in the conditions, but rather it's a difference in how and where they would be applied. And it deals with this property at the southeast corner of St. Francis and Morris. The MAPD recommendation is to not approve the conditional use for the recycling at this location, but instead to approve a conditional use for ancillary parking so that it would be used for a parking lot as opposed to a recycling facility, which the applicant has requested. The Planning Commission, after discussion about it, felt that it was appropriate to approve and recommends approving the conditional use to allow for indoor recycling on that parcel, and therefore would allow the applicant to construct the building that they are proposing to do so and is shown on this site plan. So that is the difference between the recommendations.
Okay, just to make sure I have this right. So the MAPD recommendation would not allow for their building to be built on that southeast parcel, correct?
That is correct. And I do want to share in terms of the process that the planning department comes out with a recommendation before there's any public input about this case. And that recommendation is then what is forwarded initially to the Planning Commission for the Planning Commission to debate, discuss, and then after that, the Planning Commission makes their own recommendation.
Okay. One more thing. I did see in the documents that there was somebody who spoke out at some point, a resident nearby, who expressed his concern about it. Can you explain that real quick?
That is correct. What happened is there was a phone call to the staff planner who was assigned this case, which is Kathy Morgan. She received a phone call. It was an individual just expressing interest or curiosity in what was taking place. They commented, basically with shorthand, that they preferred to see residential uses along the block, but there was never anything submitted formally in writing. It was really a comment in passing. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. Trying to just sort through all this. This is a complicated one for me. I feel like I need a flow chart. So the DAB approved 6-1 the recommendation from the MAPC?
MAPD.
MAPD.
Yes. So the DAB, in this instance, and this is why it's coming before you on non-consent, is because the DAB recommendation and the Planning Commission recommendation are different. And the way that they are different deals with this parcel right here at the southeast corner. And really it's a difference about whether or not indoor recycling should be allowed in a building built to do that, or whether it should be used instead for a parking lot. That's the difference.
Is there a follow-up question? Is further discussion? As it is non-consent, is there any discussion from the public? See none. Any further discussion on the item in general? If not, then Chair recognizes Councilmember from District 3 for recommendation and possible motion. Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. Based on the discussion at the District Advisory Board, also I wanted to remind Council that there's one person on the District Advisory Board who lives in close proximity to this, and she's very active in the neighborhood, and she did not have many problems at all. In fact, she made the motion to recommend that this be approved. So based on all of those, I'm going to make the motion to follow the MAPD staff recommendation.
Motion is made. I'll second it. Clerk, open the roll. Members cast the vote.
Can I ask
It's
a
mumbling. Yes.
question?
There's a discussion on the motion, please.
So this is for legal.
Of course.
That's not one of our recommended actions, so can we do that?
If the motion would be essentially that you would be denying the request at this point, because MAPD, and I'll look to Scott for further clarification, but MAPD's recommendation was to not allow the conditional use for the inside recycling.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity to address this one. There are three we put it into a table in the staff report to try and explain this. I would boil it down to you have two recommendations that are really one from the DAB and one from the Planning Commission. The staff recommendation, the planning staff recommendation, again, done at the outset, it mirrors what the DAB recommended. So you've got either the DAB recommendation or you have the Planning Commission recommendation. The difference, again, is whether or not there should be indoor recycling allowed on the southeast parcel. And And I would just follow up real quick to say that the Planning Commission recommendation was developed after the initial planning staff recommendation and after there were opportunities for public input, phone calls, letters, signs, posting in the newspaper, et cetera, and then later on an opportunity for public formal protests to be submitted, and there were none submitted on the application submitted by the applicant.
Okay, so my question then is, the DAB is recommending to follow staff's recommendation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion.
As the seconded, I will allow the amendment of the motion. Could you restate your motion, just for clarification?
Okay, my motion at this point will be to take the DAB recommendation to approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Mr. Manager.
Hesitate to jump in here, but I think what I've heard from staff members from law and planning is that actually that would be to deny the zone change and conditional use.
That's what you said.
It would be to approve, because there are three.
It would be, sorry, go ahead.
It would be to approve. There are 3 parcels, and so 2 of them would be approved just as the applicant has submitted their request. The 3rd parcel, instead of being approved for a conditional use for indoor recycling, instead there would be an approval for a conditional use for ancillary parking. So that it could be moved into it could be used as a parking lot.
Since we don't have the button right now, would that be the second option on the grid? You're referring to this one, the middle one?
I think that you're going to end up denying the zone change because these are all parceled together. And essentially you are denying the conditional use for one parcel and granting it for the other parcels. So your options at this point would either be to approve it all, deny it all, or send it back to MAPC.
Okay, the discussion at DAB was that this was a compromise in allowing them to get what they were asking for in the north property and the east property. But the discussion at DAB included a request to make it known that they wanted to keep the southwest property multifamily residential.
So then that would be denying the request for the zone change regarding that particular parcel.
But allowing them to have what they were requesting for the other 2 parcels. Like Scott mentioned just a second ago.
Have we ever divided these up before, Scott? I mean, because they're really not approving the MAPC decision. So they're denying the zone change and conditional use in reference to the one parcel.
No, not in my tenure. This is the first one that's had 3 separate parcels with.
Let me jump in. Maybe I could be helpful. If we were to divide this up into the 3 parcels as individual votes, you've run into some problems where there's nothing that says that the 2 parcels would have been voted or would have been favorable, the 3rd one wasn't in there. We would pretty much change the entire equation, which makes me, I think, a big concern. I'm wondering if legal can come up with somewhat of a remedy where if it's to reject the recommendation, pass the recommendation, or maybe send it back with a request for clarification or request for utilizing the will of the DAB. Is there a cleaner way to do this where we don't run into unintended consequences?
I think the cleanest way to do it would be to send it back to MAPC so that they can have a hearing on exactly what is being proposed regarding each particular parcel and then come back with whatever recommendation that would be.
And Scott, is there any consequences in delaying this by sending it back to ensure more clarification?
You know, the reason for the application is so that the applicant can construct the building and expand their business, so there would be delays to doing that.
There's a button to push.
Oh, yeah, so.
Could I just make a comment?
Yeah, I don't know if, of course you can, I don't know if we actually have a real motion on the floor at this point. I think we're still trying to discuss what that motion would be. So, just for clarification, I will detract my second, and thus the motion is now secondless, and thus the screen should go back to the way it was, and council members can ask questions. Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. This is all kind of confusing, right? But I don't hear dissent that we all want what staff and the DAB are recommending. And whenever I'm saying something wrong, you correct me, right? But what I'm hearing is that the two properties are okay. No one wants the indoor recycling, but they're okay with ancillary parking. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm not hearing dissent from anyone. It's just a matter of how we wordsmith it. Is that correct? So my concern is if we send it back to MAPC, that's going to take a long, it seems like we could wordsmith this and get it taken care of. Unless I'm wrong that somebody's in dissent of that, but I haven't heard anyone. It's just how do we word it? And you did provide us with this handy dandy little chart, which I think would probably be pretty helpful, and then with legal. But I guess I would just be hesitant to send it back because of a wordsmithing issue. We should maybe be able to figure it out. Just my thought.
So the member of District 3, I think, should be making the motion, and hopefully whichever motion it is with the guidance of legal counsel, we defer to the member from District 3 for clarification.
I have one more question to Scott. Would they be allowed to build the building on that the far northwest parcel if this were denied? That's already limited industrial, correct?
With this zone change and then with the conditional use that would be applied to the property, yes, they would be able to build their building to the north, at the northeast corner of the intersection of St. Francis and Morris. Just to clarify that the applicant has proposed to build it at the building at the southeast corner.
And then the ancillary parking could be, what would it take to allow the ancillary parking on the south side? Is that allowed under multifamily?
It would require, if it's in a residential zoning district, it requires a conditional use, and so that's why that's part of the initial recommendation from staff. That requirement comes with conditions for landscaping and screening of the parking lot.
One option would be to divide this up and to make 3 separate motions, or 2 motions that staff or that the council approve MAPC recommendations in reference to parcels, the northeast corner and the 2 lots on the southeast would be one motion, and it would be approving, and I'm looking at Scott to make sure that I'm getting this right, would be approving MAPC's recommendations regarding those 2 parcels. And then the southwest corner would be to deny or to approve the southwest corner with a CUP for parking.
Yes. With the conditional use for parking.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Councilmember for District 3, it's up to him to make the motions.
Okay, so I will move first. I'll move that we take MAPC's recommendations for the far north and the far east parcel.
I think you have to be more specific.
I heard someone make a comment to the motion saying that it should be
I
more
was
specific.
talking out to myself. I should have buzzed in, but I think, yeah, I have to be more specific on the location. As it says in the table, northeast corner of Moore Street and St. Francis Avenue. I think for the record,
Okay.
you probably need to be that specific.
Scott, go back to the
Okay,
map.
so I will make the motion that we follow MAPC's recommendations for the northeast parcel of Morris and St. Francis and the southwest parcel of Morris, and I can't read this.
Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
I'll second. I think the original motion, there was someone who voted on the original motion, so if we could have that person retract their vote, then we can, I think, get a new motion up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait, okay.
Sorry
get
about
the new
that.
motion up. All right, so there has been a motion and a seconded. So let's go ahead and vote on the said motion. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, that motion does pass. We will give the floor back to Councilmember Cirillo. Is there any follow-up motions?
Okay, I would follow up with a motion to follow the DAB recommended approval for the southeast two portions of St. Francis and Morris.
Second. Clerk will open roll. Members cast the votes. Result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, that motion does pass. Is there any other motions, Councilmember, for this item?
No, thank you.
We will consider this item concluded. Thank you, Scott. Madam Clerk,
Councilmember appointments and comments.
are there any appointments that members, did my mic go off? Are there any appointments that, I know you guys could do that members would like to make at this time? Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to appoint Tabitha Lehman to the Diversity and Inclusion Board.
Is there any other appointments that people would like to make this time so we could do it all in one motion? If not, then I will second the motion to appoint Tabitha Lehman to the Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights Board. With that, there has been a motion and seconded. Clerk will open roll. Members cast the votes. Result of 7 yeas, that motion does pass. We're back on announcements. Are there any announcements? Council Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Never a dull day up here. Not an announcement, I just want to give Philip Zevenberger a shout out. He always does a wonderful job presenting at DAB, and just wanted to shout him out from the bench. We can ask a lot of questions sometimes. He always has an answer. He's really good at explaining things, and so I just appreciate his service.
Other comments for the good of the body? See none, we'll get in then. I got a blue sheet, so I will go ahead and I move that the City Council recess into executive session for 60 minutes for discussion of an employee performance appraisal pursuant to KSA 754319B2 to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel. The executive session is required to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual, and we will have that start at 11 o'clock, and it will go until 12 o'clock so that we have a moment to take a break. So with that, it would need a second.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Result of 7 yeas, we will be in executive session from 11 to 12. We will come back into this room after executive session to close out the remainder of the meeting. Thank you.